Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into how a single product launch literally rewired global economics and human behavior. We're talking about the iPhone, but not just as a cool gadget. We're looking at how it swallowed every other piece of technology whole.
But before we get into the history, just think about this number, 4.3 billion. That is the number of active smartphones operating right now. It's a state of near absolute human saturation. And what is incredible is that this vast planetary matrix of connectivity all started with one highly secretive project in Cupertino, California.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the fragmented appliance matrix, move inside Project Purple, explore the capacitive breakthrough, the overthrow of carrier hegemony, the App Store inversion, and finally, the AI continuum. We are going to trace the unbroken line from the clunky gadgets of 2006 all the way to the localized AI processors of 2026. All right, let's jump straight into part one, the fragmented appliance matrix. Think back to your pockets around early 2006. You practically needed cargo pants just to leave the house. If you wanted to function in modern society, you needed a cellular phone for voice calls, a RIM BlackBerry for your corporate emails, an iPod to hold your music, a chunky, dedicated GPS unit for your car, and a digital camera for photos. It was a mess. Each of these standalone hardware boxes was dominated by static plastic keyboards and primitive, clunky menus. And the immense processing power of the era? Well, that was anchored to the sedentary desktop PC. You could really only access the digital world while sitting completely static inside an office cubicle or at a computer desk. So how did we escape this mechanical nightmare? That brings us to part two, inside Project Purple. What's absolutely fascinating here is that Steve Jobs didn't actually set out to conquer the phone market. The whole thing? It was a defensive pivot. Apple engineers, led by Johnny Ive and Scott Forstall, had been experimenting with advanced multi-touch for tablet concept, but Jobs realized that cheap cellular phones were becoming a global commodity that threatened to cannibalize the iPod, which at the time was Apple's main moneymaker. So he made a radical decision: scrap the tablet and compress that experimental multi-touch interface directly into a pocket-sized device. And this shift was just monumental. Operating under extreme psychological and operational quarantine, like total secrecy, the team had to solve massive problems. For the physical hardware, Jobs cold-called Corning's CEO, Wendell Weeks, to resurrect a 1960s uncommercialized structural glass recipe called Gorilla Glass, literally just so it could survive the daily friction of living in a pocket. On the software side, Scott Forstall flawlessly compressed Apple's full-scale desktop-grade Unix operating system, stripping away its memory-heavy dependencies to fit into a low-power mobile processor. They moved away from fixed plastic buttons to dynamic, capacitive, multi-touch glass. Okay, moving on to part three, the capacitive breakthrough. Let's look at the literal bioelectricity of human input. Prior to 2007, touchscreens were resistive. You know the ones. They required two flexible plastic layers to be physically pressed together with a hard fingernail or a little plastic stylus. It was slow, clunky, and completely interrupted your workflow. Apple totally inverted this layout by deploying a projected capacitive matrix. Basically, this was a highly sophisticated electrostatic grid placed directly beneath that chemically strengthened glass. The physics of how this actually works is brilliant. Step one, an ultrafine grid of microscopic electrodes carries an electric current right across the glass. Step two, because the human body naturally conducts electricity, your bare finger absorbs a microfractional charge when it touches the screen, which disturbs that localized field. Step three, a high-speed controller scans this matrix thousands of times per second, translating those tiny physical distortions into clean data vectors. The software framework, known as Cocoa Touch, catches these spatial coordinates. That invisible software translation is what created fluid, inertial scrolling, and pinch-to-zoom scaling. They completely virtualize mechanical input. But hardware is only half the battle. Let's look at part four, overthrowing carrier hegemony. Because let's be real, a beautiful piece of hardware would mean absolutely nothing if telecom carriers still dictated the software and features. Back in 2006, telecom giants like Verizon and AT&T treated phones as submissive marketing tools. They locked down features and forced users into rigid, expensive plans just to buy ringtones or send texts. Jobs waged a massive campaign against this old model. He approached Singular's CEO, Stan Sigman, and handed him an uncompromising ultimatum. Apple would build a revolutionary phone, but only if Apple got absolute multi-tiered sovereignty over the device's design, its software, and the brand ecosystem, plus a lucrative share of the monthly subscription revenue. Singular, desperate to outposition Verizon, actually signed the deal.
The result was historic. On June 29, 2007, the iPhone officially launched at $499 for the 4GB model and $599 for the 8GB model. Thousands lined the sidewalks. The resulting deal completely broke the back of carrier dominance. It established a new historical rule. The company that controls the hardware and software's user interface holds the ultimate balance of power in the digital economy.
This sets the stage perfectly for Part 5, the App Store inversion. Let's see how this built into an economic explosion. Initially, Jobs aggressively resisted opening the iPhone to third-party native apps. He actually wanted developers to build lightweight web applications for Safari, fearing external code would pollute the device. But venture capitalists like John Doerr at Kleiner Perkins, alongside Apple board member Art Levinson, violently broke Jobs' resistance. They realized the iPhone was essentially a mobile supercomputer. So in 2008, the App Store launched, instituting a mandatory 30% digital storefront tax. By offering a global billing machine with zero marketing overhead, the App Store completely industrialized the software economy. It created an inescapable trillion-dollar digital ecosystem. Just look at what this dematerialized economy enabled. Instagram scaled its visual network entirely through the iPhone's built-in optical cameras. Uber and Lyft transformed transit by running mapping matrices right on the GPS system. WhatsApp completely bypassed traditional carrier SMS networks. The great software gold rush had officially begun. And that evolution leads us to our final section, Part 6, the AI continuum. Tracing this continuum, we see a direct, mathematically unbroken evolution. We go from the 2007 Glass blueprint to the 2008 App Store inversion, through the Apple Silicon chip wars of the 2010s, straight into the localized edge inference engines of 2026 cognitive AI systems. The underlying logic of containing an entire computing universe within your pocket remains exactly the same today as it was on day one. A massive part of this was the Apple Silicon revolution in the 2010s. Off-the-shelf processors just couldn't handle advanced computational tasks, so Apple designed custom system-on-a-chip architectures. What's crucial here is the neural engine, dedicated hardware purpose-built to execute complex math at lightning speeds. By running advanced generative AI models locally right on the device's custom hardware, it preserves human privacy and slashes wait times to zero. It completely bypasses legacy cloud systems. And this brings us to the ultimate interface shift. Just as capacitive touch broke the mechanical tyranny of those old plastic keyboards in 2007, conversational AI agents are executing the next layer of democratized access. Companies like OpenAI and Anthropic are developing multimodal cognitive agents. They are turning the smartphone into an invisible lens that wraps directly around human consciousness, bypassing static touch icons entirely in favor of unstructured natural speech and sight. When you look at Apple Park in Cupertino today, that massive $5 billion spaceship ring of curved glass, it stands as a physical monument to this triumph. Today, the software code compiled in the AI warehouses of San Francisco travels along the exact hardware and financial highway that Steve Jobs paved in 2007. He literally built the mandatory physical interface of modern life. We've seen how absolute hardware consolidation transformed our world, dismantled monopolies, and ingested every fragmented tool into a single pocket appliance. As we step into the era of edge AI, we are left with a profound question. As AI becomes our new cognitive lens, who will control the interface to our consciousness next? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the interfaces that shape your world.